Alright, so this video, I'm just kind of go over a few things with this Chrysler 6-speed automatic transmission. They put them in pretty much everything. Chrysler 200, Avengers, Grand Caravan. It's usually with a 3.6 engine. They did put them in some of the older Caravans with a 3.8 and stuff, but I'm just kind of go over it a little bit. Some of the things that I see as an independent mechanic. The first thing you'll notice if you have one of these is you have the dipstick tube here, but when you go to check the transmission fluid, you pull it out and this is what you have. It's a plug. And the way you check the transmission fluid on these transmissions is you hook a scan tool to the car's computer, go into the live data stream, look at the temperature of the transmission fluid, and then you also take your dipstick tube, which does not come with the car. You have to buy these separately. And this is one of the dipstick tubes, real long tube that you get. And what it is, this is marked off by millimeters, and like this is 20, 25, 30, 35. And it just goes up. It's basically it's marked off, and what you do is you correlate the temperature of the transmission to a chart that they have, and say it's 160 degrees, then it should be showing, this is off the top of my head, I don't know if this is correct or not, it should be showing about 40 millimeters on the dipstick tube. So that's how you check it. Now a lot of people your average person is not going to be able to have a scan tool with live data. They're not going to have one of these dipsticks. Now these dipsticks, if you did want to invest in one, they're pretty cheap. I think I got this one on Amazon for about 15 bucks. And since I do a lot of these transmissions, I use it quite a bit, so it's no big deal for me to purchase it. Now there is a way to mark your oil dipstick. I have another video on that. A lot of guys made videos on how to mark your oil dipstick and use it as a transmission dipstick. It's not as accurate, obviously, as hooking a scan tool up and doing it that way, but it can get you in the ballpark. And one of the biggest killers, these transmissions are pretty good transmissions. These transmissions are pretty good transmissions. You know, they have the ability to go, you know, a couple 100,000 miles or more if maintained properly. I think Chrysler says change the transmission fluid every 100,000 or 120,000, something like that. I don't remember exactly. I would probably change it a little bit sooner than that. And the other thing that's a real big killer on these, this is probably the 4th transmission I've done, one of these 62 TEs in the last 6 months or so. Prematurely. This transmission you're looking at right here has about 114,000 on it. The last one I did had about 60,000 miles on it. And what happens is the transmission lines are junk. They're just junk, and they leak, and people don't realize it, and the transmission goes low and it starves the pump in the front, and then you have the whine, and the transmission is basically on its way out at that point. And my biggest suggestion, if you have one of these Chrysler Grand Caravans or whatever, the newer Chrysler, would be every time you change the oil, just take a look at your transmission lines real quick and make sure they're good. Because that's a huge problem on these Chryslers, in my opinion, just from what I've seen. I mean, I don't work at a Chrysler dealership, so I can't say that, but I'm just saying from what I've seen here, this is literally the fourth one I've replaced because of bad transmission lines, and people don't realize they're leaking, or they don't care, or whatever, and then you know, the transmission goes out. And the thing is, with the transmission line, you know, and then people don't know. The one I did a while back had that one had the most miles on it with a bad transmission. It had like 140,000 on, 150,000, and the guy, instead of checking the transmission fluid correctly, he just kept dumping in a random amount of transmission fluid into it, because when I got the van, when it came here to me, it was so over full that it was probably, I would say, at least 2 quarts over full. Like it the transmission was just way overfilled. So people are just kind of guessing and throwing in whatever, and that's not a good way to do that either. So I would suggest either looking at my video or some of the other videos online on how to make your own transmission dipstick tube for this, or transmission dipstick for this, would be my suggestion on checking the fluid if you don't have a scan tool. I'm going to go over checking the fluid the way that we do it in the shop. I've got a Grand Caravan in here. Now this is a 2014, 114,000 on it. She had the torque converter code and a couple other transmission codes, and I got it, and the transmission lines were leaking, of course, so I replaced the transmission lines on it, and then I just installed a low mileage used transmission in here to fix all the problems with the old transmission. So this is another one of those that bit the dust over the transmission lines. So I'll kind of show you the lines, and I actually haven't. I'm done with this job. I just got to fill the transmission up with fluid and put the wheels back on and drop it down. But I'll just show you the lines and where they leak normally, and then I'll start putting some fluid in it, and I'll check it, and I'll kind of show you how we check it. Which, if you don't have a scan tool, a decent scan tool, you may not be able to do it this way. I don't know if the basic hand scan tools have transmission temperature in the live stream. I kind of doubt it, but if you have a somewhat decent scan tool or a better lowering scan tool, look for the transmission temperature output on the live data, and that's how you'll check it. So anyway, kind of a long-winded opening, but I just kind of want to go over some of the things with these transmissions. I'll show you the transmission lines and where they normally leak at real quick, and then we'll go about filling this up. Alright, so here's the lines. Like I said, these are new, but normally they'll start to leak right here where they come out from under the radiator support. They'll leak right here at this compression fitting, and then this rubber protector here, the loom, will be all oil dry. It'll be real wet and oily, and that's normally where these leak at. You know, and they go down to the transmission here, and I haven't really seen them leak there at all. It's always, in my experience, it's always been right here. They'll leak right in here on the top, and this whole loom protector and all that will be just oil drenched, and that's what starts the downfall of these transmissions a lot, at least, again, from my experience. So, and the problem with these transmission lines is on most of the cars you have to take off the front bumper or the grill area. On this car, I was able just to take off the one side and get my hand in there and do it. But it is kind of a pain. It's not like the old school ones where you can just go to the radiator and unscrew it real easy. These kind of go around the top and go to their own cooler, and they actually come in like right in here, and you know, you got the grill and all that stuff in the way, so you have to remove all that. So anyway, anytime you check your oil or you're under your hood for some reason, just if you have a Chrysler, just take a quick look right here and make sure that these are still dry relatively. I mean, if you got a lot of miles, of course there might be a little bit of grime on here, but you don't want this wet. If these are wet, then get them replaced and get it done, because you know, your transmissions won't be far behind if you run it low on fluid. And these are pretty reasonable. I got these at O'Reilly's, I think, for around $50 for both of them. The last car I did was a Chrysler 200, and they weren't available from O'Reilly, so I had to get it from the dealer, and I think they were quite a bit more expensive from the dealer. But anyway, regardless, there's nothing. It's not going to be anywhere near the cost of a transmission. So it's just quick, simple check. Look under here and make sure they're not wet. If they are wet, get them replaced, and if they're not, then you should be good. And just keep an eye on them. Make sure you know, anytime you open the hood or change the oil, whatever, just give it a quick. All right, so I got the launch loaded up, and I went to the live data stream, and I have in here the trans oil temperature. So right now it's only at 70 degrees, so it's still pretty cold. I put about 8 quarts of transmission fluid in this. The junkyard had drained it out, and they drained out the torque converter, so it was pretty low. I think these hold about 9 quarts total. And of course, even if you drain it out, you're still going to have some in there. So we're probably real close to being where it should be. Always use ATF4 when doing Chrysler transmission. Don't put anything else in there, especially these newer ones. I mean, if you have an older one, check with the manufacturer, but in general, that's what Chrysler wants you to use. So I went ahead and print out the sheet here. And this, 120 degrees, it should be between 14 and 32 millimeters on the stick, 160 and 200. So when it's warmed up, it'll probably be between 160 and 200, somewhere in that range. So it's 40 to 54 at 200, or at 160, 24 to 42. So normally what I do is I put it at about 45 on these, 45 millimeters on a stick. So like I said, it's pretty cold right now. So let's just check it real quick. And all you do is take out that plug that they put in there, just unscrew it, and then put the dipstick tube down in there. Alright, so I don't know, I'm probably not picking up on the camera, but right now I am right at 20 millimeters on the stick, and at 120 degrees, it should be between 14 and 32. So we're probably right around where we should be. It's probably going to need some more. I got a feeling it's not going to go up that much more when it gets hotter. But as you can see here, we're still only at 77 degrees. Hopefully you can see that on the temperature, 72 degrees. So what I'm going to do is let it warm up a little bit. I might take it around the block real quick, try to get to warm up a little bit more, and then we'll come back and check it. But I'm going to try to keep it, normally I put it right at about 45, between 40 and 45 is where I usually put it on these. And so you can see it's kind of a process, checking your transmission fluid on these new Chryslers. Everyone's going to kind of go to this, I think, eventually. It's already getting harder to service these transmissions. A lot of them don't have dipstick tubes, or dipsticks, or even tubes to even do this. At least Chrysler puts a tube in there to put the fluid in. A lot of the manufacturers don't even put a tube in there anymore. So this is kind of where the industry's going, more of a sealed up transmission. And if you have an issue like a transmission light or something, it's going to be more of a pain to service it. But this is the process we're going to use to do this. So I'm going to take it around the block real quick and try to get it warmed up, and then we'll check it again. I'm pretty critical on this stuff. I like it to be right. So I will double check this several times before I give it back to her. And I will also make sure there's no leaks or anything, being it's a transmission from the junkyard. It's a low mileage transmission. I think he said it had about 75 or 80,000 miles on it. But regardless, you still want to double check it for any kind of leaks or anything. So I'm going to go take this for a spin around the block, keep the scan tool hooked up to it, and see if we can get this temperature to come up a little bit on it. And I like to get it at operating temperature. Your goal really is to get it at operating temperature when you check it. So I'm guessing they probably average about 180, 190. So we want to get it at least to 170 or so, and check it and make sure that we're in the right range before we decide that it's good. So because transmission fluid will expand as it gets warm. So I wouldn't just check it cold. I would still go by the rule of thumb of checking it while it's warm, operating temperature. So we'll get this up to operating temperature real quick and come back and check it. Alright, I just took it on the highway for a little bit, probably maybe 5 miles or so, and I got it up to about 160, which seems about as far as it's going to go today with this weather and whatever. But I did drive it about 5-6 miles. I took it on the highway for a little bit. So I got the cap out. We're going to just go check it real quick. And it looks like we are right at 40 millimeters. So I almost think I might leave it alone. Yeah, 160 between 24 and 42 millimeters, and then the max temp at 200, 40 to 54. We're right at 200 right now, or right at 40 millimeters right now at 160. So I think we're good. I don't think I'm gonna put any more in it. Because if it would get to that 200 mark, the fluid would go up a little bit. So that's the proper procedure checking transmission fluid on these Chryslers. Like I said, I use the Launch B431. Any good scan tool will be able to read temperature, transmission temperature. Now I don't know about the lower end ones. So I don't know. You might have to seek somebody out, or look at the other videos online that kind of give you an idea of how to use your engine dipstick tube to check it. It's not going to be 100% accurate like this is, but it will get you in the ballpark and protect your transmission from destruction if it's too low, if you're running it too low. So anyway, that's where we're headed now with the industry. Not a real big deal for us. Like somebody that's got a good scan tool, you pay $15 for that dipstick tube, and you'll have it for life. So it's not a huge deal, but it is if you're just a regular person wanting to check your transmission fluid. It's way more complicated than it used to be. So that's pretty much it. These are pretty good transmissions. I'm not trying to dog on these transmissions at all. I've seen them go over 200,000 easy. But you got to keep fluid in them, otherwise the front pump will start to starve, or your torque converter will go out. And that's the other thing with the torque converter is you want to change your fluid, because the torque converter has clutches on the inside of it, and that material does, make its way throughout the transmission into the filter. So these do have a filter on them that you need to change. I would say between 60 and 75,000 miles, and you should be good on these transmissions for a long time. So that's about it for this. Just keep an eye on your transmission lines, and you should be okay. So I guess we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Have a good day, and as always, God bless. Thanks.